the other senators, Senator Marcos and Senator Lacson, and the other persons here hearing in this committee. What I can give you, Mr. Senator, is the clean picture of what Marinduque is now. After the 1993 and the 1996 disaster of Mark, which was really under the management of a Canadian mining company, Dome. So, from 1975 to 1991, Mark dumped 200 million tons of heavy metal in Calangcang Bay, therefore affecting 14 barangays in Calangcang Bay. There is no more aquatic life there. It's 80 hectares of mine tailings. In 1996, March 24, mine tailings disaster in Buwak River. In 1993, it affected, in 1991, it affected the Mokpog River. In 1996, the biggest disaster in the record of mining history, not only in the country but I think worldwide, happened in Marinduque because of Mark, which is managed by Dome, a Canadian entity. Mr. Chairman, up to now, all the aquatic resources is dead in the Buwak River and the Mokpog River. Not to mention, it's silted.
I cannot swim there anymore.
Wala na. Di bangka, hindi na pwedeng pumasok doon dahil it's silted with mine tailings. That's the life. After the mine disaster of 1996, the president of Dome, John Wilson, promised President Fidel Ramos that they will rehabilitate, restore, and restitute. Up to this date, that is still to be awaited for. So in 2004, we had made a study of what we would claim through USGS, and we spent 20 million pesos for the study. And so we were forced to file a case against Dome in 2004 after the studies were made, so that at least we would know what to claim and what was to be restored, what was to be restituted, and what was to be rehabilitated. That is now, up to now, the Department of Tourism had warned me not to talk about this disaster, or else people will not go to Marinduque because they will be afraid. Mr. Chairman, we're saddled with children who are afflicted with aplastic anemia. What is aplastic anemia? It is a condition where children would lose their concentration and their intelligence. I am afraid that unless something is done, we will have a community of morons. And then we have fishermen who, when they wade through the water, they lose they're afflicted also. So many fishermen have lost their legs. And actually there's nothing to fish in the waters. So it is unfortunate, Mr. Chairman, considering that we had the aquatic resources in the Buwak River and the Mokpog River. It was very rich, and it stretches 56 kilometers. So all the barangays within the periphery of the Buwak River and the Mokpog River have no means of livelihood. We had to build footbridges for the children to walk on so that they could go to school, because they cannot wait on the water, because certainly when you wait in water it is toxic, Mr. Chairman. So it's useless. The Buwak River is useless as well as the Mokpog River. it is shall we say, it's a liability for us unless something is done. But we had to file the case for them to make good their promise of rehabilitation, restoration, and restitution. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman, and I would invite all of you here present to see what irresponsible mining had done to the province of Marinduque. It is a pity because Marinduque has the Luzon datum. What does that mean? That Marinduque is the center of the 7,107 islands. Mr. Chairman.
What is it? Luzon datum?
Luzon datum.
Surigao daw to, kuya.
Luzon datum.
Surigao daw. Baka ma-recognize.
So it's the heart.
Surigao
It is
daw.
the heart of the Philippines. Kaya nga sayang na sayang.
And I think a few kilometers to the north is the Verde Island. No? The center of the century.
Yes. And the Mimaropa region is reaching its biodiversity.
Thank you, Governor Reyes. Congressman, would you wish to add, please?
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan, Chairman, Senator Marcos, Senator Lacson, other honorable resource persons, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm very proud of my province, Marinduque, and I'm very proud of my people from Marinduque. And we also own Senator Pangilinan, so we're very proud of him as well. During hearings such as this, the pride of our people in our province usually comes in form of best practice awards. And we have won many. We have won Clean and Green Awards. We have won best practices in local governance, TPM, DOF, you name it, we almost are sure that we have won it. But this morning, we face you not because we're going to win a best practice award, but we're probably going to serve as a horrible warning for other provinces and localities who are about to make a decision or who have made a decision to mine. From our experience in Marinduque, and this is the way really to appreciate our province in this morning's hearing. Of all of the resource persons present here, I don't see any other province that has really been as seriously affected by mining other than our province. So, from our experience, I'd like to raise 4 important points for you to consider when you embark on a mining project or about to study its viability or its continued operation. First of all, what we sorely lack, and we would like to suggest this honorable committee to recommend probably in its findings, is an initial health and environment baseline study. This is very important because even before you start a mining project, you have to know what the characteristics of the people and the environment are. Because later on, sigurado po magtuturuan yung kumpanya at yung mga ibang authorities. At sasabihin po nila na hindi po kami ang gumawa ng damage na yon or hindi po kami responsible sa health effects na yon sapagkat nandiyan na yan bago pa kami pumasok sa inyong community. Unfortunately, in Marinduque, that's what happened. We didn't have enough comprehensive health studies and environmental studies to prove that indeed it was solely the mining company that was responsible for all the damage. But you ask them, mabuti na lang sa Marinduque at that time, there was no other big industry operating. There's no plastics factory, there's no other large-scale factory, there's no power plant, there's no nuclear plant or whatever. So it was very simple actually to deduce from observation that the lead comes from the mine or another kind of toxin comes from the mine because this is the only large-scale operation that was happening in the province. So this baseline study must be done before any operation takes place. Nang sa ganon, later on, it's very clear that you can kind of correlate the damage between before and after the operations began. And of course, there should be a periodic monitoring system so that you don't anymore wait until the end of the useful life of the mine before you find out pala that you've been loading up a lot of toxins into the person's environment. There are air samples, water quality samplings that can be done, but they should be done in a more comprehensive manner. Second point that I'd like to emphasize, and this could be also an existing weakness up to now, there should be a mineral volumes verification system. We keep telling everyone that there are so many benefits of mining. It's going to bring jobs, it's going to bring improved income for the province. However, alam ba po ng mga tao kung ano bang tunay na tinatanggal po dyan at binubungkal sa lupa? Palagay ko po, wala. Puro lang po tansyahan yan. Tansyahan po ng mga opisyal sa DNR, tansyahan po ng opisyal sa ano tinatawag po dito sa mining company, sapagkat more often than not po, when you remove minerals from our land, this is still taken to another country for processing. So you will never find out actually what has the exact volume that was removed from your territory. So paano po niyo makukompute yung exact amount of your entitlement as a local government or as even the national government? Because all of your shares are dependent on the value that you're taking out from that hole in the ground. Now, if it's an oil or a gas project, it's easy. Meron po tayong mga valves, meron po tayong mga accurate measuring mechanisms for taking out liquid or gas from underneath the ground. But rocks, ladies and gentlemen, kung matatansya po ninyo kung ano yung laman ng more or less isang tonelada, it's all based on estimates. And actually, you should call it guesstimates. No? Hindi naman talaga ganun ka-accurate yun. So there's a lot of room for massaging numbers. The third point that is very important to recognize also, you need the adequate protection of bonds and insurance policies. Because when something goes wrong, you can be sure that the amount will be in the billions. And it's enough to sink any company kung babayaran po nila lahat yan na wala man po silang adequate performance bonds and insurance policies. Now, this will of course increase the cost of operation, but I'll discuss later on why that's not a valid point of argument. The fourth point that's very important is we have to modify our existing criminal and civil laws to make it more difficult for especially foreign companies to leave the scene of the crime after they have determined that they could be at fault. Because in the case of Marinduque, nung nakita na po nila, nakasalanan po talaga nila ang nangyari, tumakbo na po sila. Lahat po ng opisyal, kasama po ang mga assets, nag-alsabalutan na, at ngayon hirap na po tayong habulin sila. But if better laws were in place to make these companies answerable and more imprisoned at the time here in the Philippines before they can leave, then it's possible that we can get the justice should something go wrong. Now, all of the above suggested points, ladies and gentlemen, will surely increase the cost of mining companies. But these points are not new in other parts of the world where profitable mining operations take place. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, is there anything more valuable than human life? Because if there is, then you don't need us in this room. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Yes.
Congressman Reyes. Senator Ping Lacson would like to...
Unless some of our resource persons have opening statements to make, I'd like to ask or address my questions to the Director of MGB.
Meron pa po silang...
Sige po. After.
Yes. Before we go to the private sector, we're done with government. We have the NCIP. Ma'am, the chairperson is here. Zenaida, Brigida, Amada, Howie. Do you have your opening statement?
Good morning, Mr. Senators, and thank you very much for being invited. It's very seldom that the NCIP is ever recognized, and we have always been minorities, so we thank you very deeply from the hearts that you have given us a chance to talk. We come here because the NCIP has been, I think, rudely identified as being anti-mining. We are neither anti-mining nor for mining. We are for an equitable distribution now of the last resource, which is there. As an opener, we would like to say, first and foremost, our interest is that if you look at the map of the DNR and even of the MGB, you will find that the only areas left that are biodiverse and environmentally stable are what are ancestral domains. And here you find the indigenous peoples, who are also considered among the poorest of the poor in communities that are also considered at the bottom of the economic rank. Then at the same time, if you plot the areas which the MGB has looked at as the most possible, what they call footprints, areas of mining, they are on the same ancestral domains. So the ancestral domains become the area of conflict. Mr. Senators, what we would just like to say is the IPs have always known where the gold is. It is part of our myth and our legends, and there is not one IP community in the Philippines that has not had gold ornaments, no matter how crudely processed. What has happened is we only extract the gold that we need. We do not store it as a measure of savings or even something else to use other than ornaments, and therefore we have not gone into large-scale mining. When we talk of small-scale mining among indigenous peoples, it's really panning. It's just panning. And all this talk about indigenous peoples going into small-scale mining as defined by the mining code is something that's way beyond our ken. But we have learned how